We're going to start with the weird laws and make our way to the most absurd and bizarre laws of the medieval era. Number 7. The football ban. Imagine being thrown in jail for simply playing a sport. Well, in medieval England, that's exactly what could happen to you. In 1314, King Edward II banned a violent game known as mob football, which was a chaotic version of soccer played through entire towns, where broken bones and destroyed property were very common. But the real reason for the ban wasn't just public safety. It was actually for war purposes. England was constantly fighting battles across Europe, and the king needed every able-bodied man to become a skilled longbowman. Years later, in 1388, Parliament went even further by ordering laborers and servants to stop wasting time playing football and spend their free time practicing archery instead. If you chose to ignore these laws and chose football over archery, you could be fined or even sentenced to 6 days in prison. In 1409, a London ledger even shows that 8 men were forced to pay a collective £20 bond just for collecting money to organize a football match. As you can obviously tell, this law is indeed ridiculous, which is why most people simply chose to ignore it. Although even more kings tried to crack down on this law, such as King Henry IV and King Henry V, it eventually ended up fizzling out. Number 6. Hue and Cry. In 1285, King Edward I passed a strict law known as the Hue and Cry, which was a chaotic system where anyone who witnessed a crime had to scream for help, legally forcing every able-bodied man in earshot to join a frantic armed manhunt throughout the entire town. But the real reason for this mandate was actually because England had absolutely no professional police force. Therefore, the crown forced entire communities to act as the police instead, meaning it didn't matter if you were sleeping, working a field, or eating. If you ignored the alarm, you were legally treated as an accomplice to the crime. Years later, courts went even further by imposing collective punishments, meaning an entire town could be fined if a criminal managed to slip away. Historical courts show that individual citizens were frequently fined simply for being too slow to join a chase or failing to wake up when the alarm was raised. Although later monarchs tried to crack down even harder on lazy towns by sending royal investigators to hand out massive group penalties, this law was retracted once police became a thing. Number 5. The common scold. In medieval society, spreading rumors wasn't just considered rude, it could actually be treated as a crime. People who were repeatedly accused of gossiping, insulting, or constantly stirring up trouble could be labeled a common scold, which was someone that they believed threatened the peace of the entire community. Instead of simply paying a fine, many offenders were publicly humiliated to discourage others from behaving the same way. One of the most infamous punishments was the scold's bridle, which was a heavy iron cage that would lock around the head with a metal plate pressing against the tongue, making it painful or even impossible to speak. The wearer would then be paraded through the streets while neighbors would laugh at them and mock them. While this punishment seems shockingly cruel nowadays, medieval authorities truly believed that public shame was one of the most effective ways to maintain order. Number 4. Trial by ordeal. Imagine being accused of a crime with absolutely no evidence to prove whether you were guilty or innocent. Instead of investigating the case, a medieval court might simply leave the decision up to God. This was known as a trial by ordeal, which was one of the strangest legal practices of the medieval ages. One common ordeal required someone to carry a red-hot iron bar several steps before their hands were bandaged, while another one would force the accused to plunge their bare hand into a cauldron of boiling water to retrieve a stone from the bottom. Then, after 3 days, a priest would inspect the wounds. If they appeared to be healing cleanly, the person was declared innocent, but if the injuries became either infected or showed signs of poor healing, it was taken as a proof of guilt. Which you could imagine, the injuries got infected most of the time. While it seems completely irrational today, many people genuinely believed that divine intervention would reveal the truth. Number 3. Footwear length. Believe it or not, there was a time when wearing shoes that were too long could actually make you a criminal. During the 15th century, a bizarre fashion trend swept across England. Men began wearing extremely long, pointed shoes known as pikes. This was because at the time, a longer point meant that you were wealthy and important. In 1463, a law was passed that would state that no man below the rank of a lord could wear shoes with points longer than 2 inches. Medieval rulers believed that clothing should immediately reveal a person's place in society, and they didn't want merchants or commoners dressing like nobles. So while some of today's fashion trends might seem a bit weird, at least you wouldn't get in trouble for wearing the wrong pair of shoes. Number 2. Divorce combat trials. If you think modern divorce proceedings can get ugly, medieval Germany had an even stranger way of settling certain legal disputes. In some regions, when a married couple became involved in serious legal conflict, and there wasn't enough evidence to determine who was in the right, they would resolve the matter through a judicial duel, which basically means a trial by combat. To make the fight seem more balanced, the husband was forced to stand inside a waist-deep pit with one hand tied behind his back. He was armed only with a wooden club, while his wife remained free to move around the edge of the pit, carrying a heavy stone wrapped inside a long cloth or sack that she could swing like a weapon. The idea of this wasn't that the stronger person would win, but that God would grant victory to whoever had the just cause. While this wasn't a standard method of divorce, medieval legal manuals show that these unusual duels were recognized as a legitimate way of settling certain disputes when other evidence was unavailable. Number 1. Animals on trial. As bizarre as it might sound, medieval courts didn't just put people on trial, they also prosecuted animals. Throughout parts of Europe, if an animal committed a serious offense, it could be arrested, imprisoned, and brought before a real court of law. Pigs were among the most common defendants because they often roamed freely through villages and occasionally would attack children. But even rats and other pests were sometimes summoned to court for destroying crops. Some animals were even assigned defense lawyers who argued on their behalf just as they would with a human client. Now, if found guilty, the punishment could be astonishingly severe. Pigs, for example, were sometimes dressed in human clothing before being publicly hanged or burned, symbolizing that they were being punished as a responsible member of society. While this seems completely absurd today, medieval people believed that maintaining law and order extended to all of God's creation. This is definitely the weirdest law of the medieval times, which is why it's so surprising that the law actually lasted from the year 1226 all the way until the late 1700s.